Hey everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube, or welcome back. If this is your third Nancy Drew Season 3 episode review, normally I would have like some sort of quip or something, but I really don't this week. It's weird. It's weird. I just turned 24. And I feel old. I feel very old. Next year I'll be 25, and then I'll be a quarter of the century, and I'm like, damn, and then I have part to 50, and then I'm close to 30. I'm like, okay, enough about that. Let's get through this week's Nancy Drew, which honestly, it kind of gave me flashbacks to New York Comic Con. Which, if you're unaware, I went to New York Comic Con a few weeks ago. If you checked out our 250 episode review on Doom Patrol, I was there live. I got some Chucky stuff from the Chucky First Impression stuff as well. I missed that because this week on Nancy Drew we went to Detective Con, which was honestly like, why was I going to get so many deja vu moments from it? And I did, a couple, like, it was very familiar to me, and I just felt like, so, I miss Comic-Con a little bit. I do. It's weird, because, like, normally, I spent a lot of money. The day did not go as planned, in terms of, like, not in a negative way, just in terms of, like, what I was planning and what ended up happening, which, at the end of the day, was still a great experience. I would love to go back again someday. It was just weird, like, watching Nancy Drew in the show kind of do their own spin on it with a more very specific niche con, and I'm just thinking to myself, I am very curious on what the smaller cons feel like, since I've got like New York Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con are like kind of like the big temple Comic Con. Then you have your PAXs, your what else is there? Forgot what else, but you have those are like the two big cons for like the world. Like, if you're near San Diego or you're near New York at those times of season, those are your time periods. And I believe there's a chance for me to go to a smaller con next month, so I'll stay tuned for that. But anyway, for enough about that. Getting back to Nancy Drew, this diverged a little bit. Like, this felt like this was like another one of those like traditional, like, we're off the beaten path a little bit. Like, we're kind of doing like a standalone episode. Continuing like the world building of Nancy Drew, and as well as obviously continuing the main mystery in some real like small incremental ways, not really as much of like a big progression. Because again, remember, Nancy Drew, presumably, should this be a regular television season, which this is kind of feeling the case it will be, this is going to go on to the spring. There's no like continuous, like, we're going like very quick. There's going to be breaks. There's going to be that. So they're definitely taking their time this time around with this mystery. And honestly, besides the con stuff, including the con stuff, I enjoyed this episode. I really did. It had a lot of fun moments. Had a lot of like, surprising moments. And again, I'm very, once again, disappointed in the fact the killer's name, or supposedly the name of a killer, included my name. I'm like, what is with Joe and killers? Like, why? I know about you. I haven't seen you. I don't think I'll watch you anytime soon, but I'm just saying I'm aware of you. Not you as the viewer, I mean you as the show. Because my friends tell me about the show. So, anyway, let's go for the Butcher recap and talk about this week's episode of Nancy Drew. So we begin, it's road trip time. Nancy, George, and Ace are heading off to Portland. In retrospect, they're in Horseshoe Bay, still in Maine, so they're heading to Portland for Detective Con, since that seems like to be their biggest lead to kind of getting one step closer to the Frozen Heart Killer, which is in connection to what they've been doing for the past week or so. So that's kind of like what their next move is. They're going to head out there and, try to meet with this podcaster who supposedly has some groundbreaking information about the Frozen Heart Killer. And so they can use that information for their own investigation. But I believe the catalyst for this trade-off is that she wants some evidence that's being kept very confidential. And since Nancy Drew knows people, like, because she's actually, made a lot of favors and such like that over the past X amount of years of her, like, amateur career, she could maybe, get some hands on the evidence. So it's like, you give me what you know, I'll give you what I know. And we get to do it live on a podcast. So that's the trade-off. Again, George is feeling, before I said any of that, the reason why Nick and Bess are not involved at the start of this case is that they just think it would be smaller for like, let's just do like a smaller like group to do this, because like it's already a hassle to like transport 5 people back and forth from Portland, from Horseshoe Bay to all the way to Portland. Plus Nick's working on the youth center opening up, and that's kind of the priority right now for him. So, and Bess is like, they just need someone more. They just need someone to watch over the Claw, because remember, I still don't get how the hell the Claw is still operating when like basically the best bulk of their workforce is just always AWOL. And again, if Nancy Drew does somehow get to episode 100, we need an episode where we just focus on the Claw. I'm just saying, just reminding you, that is an idea. Take it, writers. Take it away from there. Also, yeah, Nancy still has a crush on Ace, but George is starting to become aware of it, because like, she's making some lingering looks at him. Which I'm like, of course, yeah, Ace is gorgeous. Why not? Why wouldn't she have a crush on him? George, and yeah, so they're about to head up to Portland. While they're beginning this road trip, George tells them that she got the evidence box somehow. I forgot how she got it, but she has it for the trade-off. And Nancy, her curious self, looks in, reads in the old, police reports and like, everything that the police did at the time. And of course, as everything with Horseshoe Bay, with its supernatural paranormal activities, the ghost of Joe, the ghost of Joe. I mean, I can't believe I actually said that. The ghost of Joe. Why? Anyway, so it starts haunting them. So now Nancy's kind of inclined to like figure out like ghosts are obviously of that caliber, is basically something's unresolved and it needs to be resolved. And also, since they touched these items that were associated with Joe, now it's like, okay, y'all gonna get haunted by me until you solve this. Which is like, great. We already have enough mysteries this season to work on. Let's add in another one. Let's do that. We get the traditional like Nick and Bess talking about them sitting out this week. Well, we assumed they were going to sit out this week. And Bess was trying to make an excuse for like why they were like, excluded from this week's, adventure, this road trip adventure. It kind of feels like Bess is a little bit, jealous. The fact that they get to go do this like Detective Con thing and they're stuck like, holding down the fort. Nick's obviously trying to get the youth center up and running. So I want to say, yeah, so I believe I want to get it out and see, because like the group comes together eventually. We also, the youth center, we actually get to see it. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be another one of those rotating sets to kind of like alleviate from the Claw, because I'm pretty sure the Claw is an actual restaurant similar to what Riverdale did with the Pop Shop. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I have to double check. Don't quote me on that. But it would be interesting if that was the case. So I'm pretty sure that's just to like get, some, variation, some like different scenery. Because like it gets a little redundant when like they're doing like this big meeting at the Claw again. It's like, having the youth center, which I don't know how they're going to do when like they have kids running around, using up all the free. Again, I'm so glad Nick is rich, because like I'm pretty sure running a youth center would be expensive. If everything was for free, nothing would get, it wouldn't even survive past year 3. I'm just basically saying that. So Nick's trying to get like the little kinks out of the way. One of George's little sisters is helping out to assist Nick, but of course Nick says, okay, Wi-Fi's working, you need to work on your homework, since like apparently you haven't been handing them in, so go do them. But she doesn't really respond to him in such one of an authority way, to be honest with you. And then we had, apparently Nick also hired a new assistant, like worker, to actually run the center when Nick's not around, which I'm like, that honestly is very smart, because if Nick was to like do like the traditional, this is the second time I'm bringing up Riverdale, where like in Riverdale, like every character, even though they're unqualified, does everything. Like Archie is a firefighter, a teacher, and a soldier, a lover, a mechanic, and I'm just thinking to myself, and the list goes on and on. A miner, a construction work. Like, to be fair, Archie is a man's man. I'm just saying that, but I swear to God, you just keep adding unnecessary things. Like, instead of hiring a new cast member, it's like, oh, let's just give KJ like a new thing to do. Let's give him a new ability. Just to make it even more attractive with like the freaking 16 to 21-year-old demographic. Let's just keep doing that. I should really do like a new Riverdale episode someday. I honestly, what I've been doing is like, sorry if I'm derailing the conversation here. I've actually been going back and numbering my episodes, because I going into now, we're past 262 right now, supposedly. We're approaching 269A. But going that far in, going into like the third year, what's on the tube, I have to be careful that like, what if by accident I do a Zelda where, when we did the Zelda Let's Play on our channel like years ago, I forgot we never produced a episode 36 to 40 of that run. We just skipped to 41. So there's 5 missing episodes. And I keep thinking to myself, did I just lose the footage? And like, no, we never recorded it. So I just stupidly thought it was the 41st episode. And I was like, oh boy. So that never got resolved. So I want to make sure this doesn't happen here. So I actually did go back. I'm starting to go back and like renumbering them. It does take a while since I have to go back to the original files and like, just add it in and do it in the next episode. And just make sure like everything's still being counted incrementally. I'm up to the 70s and I just passed the Riverdale episode I did, which was not really much of an episode. It was more me just a conversation about Riverdale. I don't even know what I can even pitch that. It's classified now as a quick impression. So I'm like, I don't know if I would just do a second one or just like, what the hell it would be. I don't know, but it would be fun to like, once again, go back to the weeds of like Riverdale and just like how freaking, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, how freaking crazy that show got. Not in a good way, but bad way. Back to Dance Drew. So yeah, eventually at some point, Nancy does call in for Beth and Nick to eventually do come to Detective Con, since like they realize that because of just the severity of like the questionability of this case, they need to kind of like figure out the case truly, but also they can't really, lose this heart killer connection with the podcaster. So they have to give her some fake evidence so that it seems like they're giving them something for her so that they can get the information while they also really solve the real case. I guess I then want to go and say, we'll cut over to Nancy's side of things. So they're on their road trip. They're continuing onward. Nancy's still reading the report, and conveniently they pass by the factory that this one Joe sadly performed his murder in. They head inside, but as they try to escape, the door's locked. So I'm like, great, now they're trapped here with a psychotic ghost, supposedly. The ghost is appearing in random intervals, trying to demonstrate how the supposed murder happened, and even Nancy getting pushed off to kind of like recreate the murder. But then thankfully, the tea's gone cold. George and Ace try to like obviously do help her out before she actually gets killed, becomes part of another murder, as well as trespassing. Ace also starts to speak Yiddish because apparently he accidentally held on to one of the items too long, and now he is having a connection with this ghost. So I'm like, great. Ace has Yiddish powers now, or the Yiddish abilities, so like that makes him even more attractive. Is that how it works? I don't know. Anyway, continuing onwards from there, I want to say, so once they start like figuring out this like ghostly recreation, as I like to call it, they start to figure out some plot holes in the story, since like, Joe I believe the murder was committed for the right hand, but then Joe was being demonstrated with the left hand, so that doesn't really line up. So it's like, it seems like Joe was lying in his confession because the evidence is not linking up with anything. Which, again, in the 50s, cops were not 100% very true to the book on, like, what the evidence presents. If someone was to confess right away, it's like, take him, cuff him away, we're done, let's move on to the next case. It's not really, like, the whole, like, let's take our time and effort to make sure everything lines up sort of thing. So they realize that something's up here, so that's when they call in Bess and Nick to kind of like bring some falsified evidence so they can give to the podcaster so that they could still have time to really solve this case, as well as trying to figure out the heart killer. So next up, they do eventually make it to Detective Con, which I'm like, this is an interesting setting for a detective. It's an event. It's in a weird like warehouse, so to speak, and it does give me minor New York comic, like, the setups, the events, the booths, the exhibits, like, trying to make it interactive as it can be. And you have all the vendors and, like, all the, like, the mini stage. Like, again, I'm very curious to see how, I want to know how a vendor makes their money for the weekend. I'm just very curious. Because, like, I highly doubt every vendor at a Comic-Con, and I'm not trying to mean this as being offensive, but, like, it's just, you're not going to be the same popularity with every other vendor. Like, when I went to go to New York Comic Con, like I went to like the big attraction, like the FYEs or the Funimations or some of the well-known actors, and I'm just like thinking to myself, I would be just curious to how much they get, like, because obviously there's a lot of like traveling fees and hotel fees, so it's like they at least gotta break even on the trip, otherwise the trip's not worth it in the end. So I'm just very curious about that. Also, freaking actors, like really, like those prices are like ridiculous. Well, I never knew, like I always felt like pictures are for free, so I'm assuming like yeah, those would be for free, but then not in the case of like I only had to do one photograph session. Oh, I got to do a photograph session with Jason Fawn, and I think he charged $40 for just the photo, and then it was also 40 for the autograph. So I'm like, okay, I mean, photos and signatures are two completely different things, but all right, I didn't bring anything to sign because like I literally didn't know he was going to be. That was like a last minute announcement, and I was kind of in the weeds with work, so I'm like I couldn't really keep updated with like who's coming to when. So, yeah, that was the most I spent on an actor. So, and anyway, back to Nancy Drew again. So they arrive, they're doing the traditional like signing in for their badge, having an error in the name, that sort of thing. Nick and Beth show up, so the team's back together, they're reunited, and once they get signed in and everything, they start falsifying the box, which I'm like, again, really? You're gonna do this in public? Like, I know like no one understands it, but like you're just creating so many eyewitnesses, so like if something was to backfire, someone could say, hey, they were tampering with that box earlier. That's not a fully sealed box. But regardless of the case, they do. So they load up the box with like falsified evidence. They're about to head off to go just wander the con and meet the podcaster. But A starts having these a Yiddish episode where like he's getting a headache and he starts speaking Yiddish and he starts seeing like a ghostly apparition in the distance while Beth is trying to like check in on him, making sure that he's fine. I want to say they split up again. Nancy goes off to go find the podcaster while George and Nick explore the actual floor. It's actually very decent. It's not the best looking con, but I'm like, hey, it's a very niche con, so I'm like, I'm not really gonna complain that much about it. But one of the however, they pass by this weird vendor booth where it's called fans, and which I'm like confused, like, okay, so it's just like the friggin' like the old fashioned fans, like the ones you use like to cool yourself out. No, apparently on the internet someone has written fan fiction about George as like it's like a what if George was like basically the main hotshot detective and Nancy Drew was the sidekick, which I'm like, okay, George is not a sidekick, she's a partner, but like, yeah, I can understand why someone would make that inference. But in this case, it's reversed. Like George is like, the actual detective, and Nancy's like kind of like one part of like Team George's team fan or something. Honestly, if I had the money, the time, I would honestly make like a mock logo where it's like the Nancy Drew logo, so it just says George fan. If I had time, I do not have time, sadly. So I'm like, that is a very unfortunate thing, but if I had the ability, I would do it. It would be a fun 5-second joke, and then I would laugh my ass off for at least a couple days, and then I would forget about it. Also, that reminds me, there is a joke earlier in the episode where like so I'm rewatching Seinfeld again because it just came on Netflix. So I just like, you know what? It's on Netflix. It's easier to watch it because like Hulu is kind of a piece of crap with like the ads thing. In my opinion, I'm too cheap to pay for non-ads. In my opinion, that's my fault. So I'm like, Netflix doesn't have ads, so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go watch it there again this time, like just uninterrupted, so to speak. And then I remember, the traditional fight, the Summer of George. There was a line where George, either Nick said it or George said, it's the winter of George, because she needs to get away. So I guess that's the case of it. So I'm like, okay, coolios on that. So yeah, so someone's writing this fan fiction about George, and George is honored but also insulted, and also who the hell is getting all this information to kind of make this like very well accurate fan fiction with me as the hero. But it's all confusing, and she's trying to keep it in her head together. Nancy does meet with the podcaster, and the podcast is a little bit starstruck. Like, oh my god, I got this like actual detective on site. Like she's actually going out there solving the case. I'm only just staying at home and like doing like the basic podcast reporting. But again, it was nice to like build out the world. Maybe not to say like let's give her own show or something like that, because they don't really set that up in terms of like here's all like so many details about her life that like we need to spin off. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it would be fun to like on occasion on the background, like, you know, just as a random like filler scene, like we get to hear a new podcast from her, like just maybe not relating to like the episode, but just like as a one-off, like expanding the world. That's what I like about these shows. Like, to be fair, yeah, I'm very well that CW is trying so many freaking like verses for that. They have the Arrowverse, they have the Archieverse, they have the All American verse. They tried to do the Lightning verse, and now they're doing the Druniverse. With obviously Tom Swift coming at some point next year, which yes, we will be doing a review series on when that does come out, because YOLO. Where was I gonna go with that? I forgot. I completely forgot. But they're exchanging, and Nancy doesn't really like spare much time demanding like, yeah, the evidence is fake. Like most of this is fake because like there's some discrepancies in this case, and initially the podcast is like, are you trying to like take my case from me? Like, you know, like this is my thing. Like you're not allowed to do this. But Nancy's like, I don't mean to. I just got involved in this, and I just got so sucked into this. I'm actually being haunted. And also like one of the names that like they suspect is the Heart Killer signed in for the convention. So he's in the con. So now they gotta find him. So now it's really like a time race. Ace is calming down a little bit better. Apparently all the Yiddish stuff is like creating like a little bit of like a storm in his head, but he's getting there. He's getting back all right, and you know, but he starts wandering into the main what is it, the main stage, let's call it, because like I'm still remembering con terminologies over here. Where was I? Okay. So the podcast begins. It's a very generic podcast, you know, but honestly, they had the subline text of like trying to call out the killer to kind of like, you know, make an action so they can immediately arrest him. But it doesn't work because apparently there was also this interactive game where like if you go around the con and find the clues and then detect who the actual like, you know, the killer was, then you get this freaking gift card, and they accidentally pick someone, which I'm like, this guy looks like a criminal. So I feel bad for him when the con's not in season. I feel bad for him. But regardless of that, they do feel a little bummed out they couldn't be able to catch him in the moment. But, you know, Nancy's like, okay, let me go to the car. Let me get some more evidence. Like, let's actually like try to actually wheel him out, you know, because all Nancy did was really just insult him about, you know, his intelligence and like, you know, his skills as a killer. Nancy's heading out the back way, and she runs into the real killer, who is only evidence because like all the chemicals he used over his killings kind of like really numbed off his like two of his fingers. So they are managed to identify him, and you know it's your tradition, like, okay, you caught me, but like, you know, you don't really get it. You don't really get me. Like your interpretation of me is wrong, that sort of thing. The other crew members show up behind him, and he's just like ready to pounce on Nancy, and I'm like, what are you trying to do? Like, Nancy can kick ass. Let's say that. Like, she could kick ass. George can definitely kick your ass. Ace and Nick will definitely kick your ass, and Bess will probably pepper spray you. So, like, you had no chance of, like, ever making a dent on them. And during this, like, before they show up, he actually does confess to, like, you know, performing the murders. And thankfully, Nancy manages to record the conversation. The police walk in, and they immediately cuff him up. And then Nancy asks him, like, about the recent killings that he did in Horseshoe Bay, but he's not really disclosing that information. He's just part of something bigger, and you know that she's only just on the tip of this mystery. Like, you haven't solved this mystery yet. You still have more information to find. And I'm just thinking to myself, of course it's a TV show. You're not going to solve this thing in the first 3 episodes. You know, I didn't suffer. Let me correct my grammar here. I went for the entire first season just waiting for like who the freaking hell killed Lucy and whatever. Damn, season 1 was so forever ago. I'm forgetting the name. Ryan's original wife. There. So they arrest him. So it's a case closed. So they actually did get the Frozen Hearts killer. So that's done. And then I want to say there is a scene in between. I want to say, oh yeah, George and Nick immediately head back home, back to Horseshoe Bay, back at the rec center, where they still find George's little sister there, and they figure out that it was her who wrote the fan fiction since of how close this information was getting. It had to be someone like very close to their circles, and we really don't have that many other people within like the larger Drew crew, you know, families. So it had to be her, and she admits it right away, that this is what she's been doing instead of doing homework. Which I'm like, if she's making money off this, I'm like, she's making money like that young. I'm not gonna lie, that's impressive. But again, yeah, she admits that like she's knowing this thing because Odette, when she was taking over George's body last season, she managed to kind of tell her side of the things, and she decided to like write it off as like a cool story for George, and I guess it gained traction online. So while it was sweet of her, she obviously can't keep doing that any further because like that's not the truth for whatsoever, which kind of does suck. It does suck. Bess, this was very quick because I forgot to mention this. Like when Bess and Nick were at the rec center before they had to Detective Con, Bess kind of had a lingering moment with like Nick's newest assistant, well not assistant, newest staff member for the rec center, and then I think they're at the historic. I don't know if it's the same person or it's like the historical society lady. I'm not sure which one it was, but she basically hooks up with either one of them. The faces were so similar. My eyes are not 100% right now, so I'm like, apologies if I got it wrong, but she sleeps with someone at the Historic Society, so letting you know about that. Back at the Detective Con, I don't know what happens. I think the fans all assumed that the podcaster solved the case and Nancy just helped her out. I'm not really sure what the case was. I think it was in that case because the podcaster was just signing autographs and she was just in the motions of that, and then she pops over to Nancy and realizes, okay, yeah, okay, I get it, that's cool. That's it, guys. Good night. It's time to head home. Nancy and Ace stop her and her grandmother as they're walking back, and Ace pulls out the item that he had that was related to Joe that had the connection to him in his Yiddish side of things, which I think was some sort of old key from like a motel. And the grandma immediately recognizes it, and it turns out that back in the 50s, well, back in the 40s, 50s, Joe and the podcaster's grandma were a secret couple. They were secretly meeting each other and doing things. But of course, back then interracial relationships were like not very approving because like it was a different time period. Like obviously, right now, like you have all that sorts, like everyone's is like mixing up and pairing up because that's just the way things are now. Because like love is not bounded by the color of your skin. So but back then it wasn't, and had things been differently, because apparently there was a famous case related to interrelational relationships, and this thing happened a couple years before that case. The podcaster feared that it had when the murder happened, the original story was that Joe was not the killer because he was with the grandma doing things. So that was like his alibi. Like he couldn't commit the murder because he was literally doing something else with her. But in order to get that information, she had to reveal the fact that yeah, we were seeing each other, we were a couple, and of course, obviously back then that was not socially acceptable. So she would have gotten dragged for the mud as well. Joe knew about that, so when the police looked at him, it's like, okay, arrest me. That's it. Don't look any further. Here's my confession. Put me away, and that was it. Turns out the real killer was another night guard that was on duty that night, and he eventually did get arrested at another place a few years down the line, but it didn't really matter since Joe already confessed. The police considered it a done case. There was no such a thing about reopening cases or stuff like that, so they literally left him alone in jail to die. And it sucked because they were like one of like the trailblazers for like hey, we're in love with each other regardless of our skin, this could work. They could have been a trailblazer, but they weren't. And sadly, Joe realized that I'd rather have her safe than have our love, be public. So that's what ended up happening. And, it's in the grand scheme of things, the overall case isn't over, but for the grandma, it is closure. Since like, at least someone else knew that like, yeah, Joe didn't kill. There is no point in like trying to like resolve it since like every original party in that case is basically dead by this point. So there really isn't a point to like reopen up old wounds. But like at the end of the day, like that's just the way it is. And they head off, and Nancy repeats that like, yeah, this mystery doesn't seem over yet. There's still some more pieces that we still need to figure out at the end. But that ends this week's episode of Nancy Drew. So, again, I found this episode to be enlightening and just a fun episode. It was, I don't even want to describe it as a filler episode. This did have purpose. It solved one aspect of this mystery with the whole Frozen Hearts killer, but it just still opened up a web of like other of other mysteries left to solve, you know, in terms of like this larger mystery for the season. I want to say he's either tied into Temperance or he's tied into that other mysterious group we got introduced to last season, or maybe it is a whole new group. We don't know yet. I'm pretty sure it's the latter. What I said. I'm pretty sure that's the case. The case that's going to end up happening out. But again, not too sure of that. Not really too sure. Yeah, I believe, and it was fun to see finally the youth center open, which I'm very thankful they actually get it open like early on in the season, instead of like this being like a mid-season revelation. Like, here we go, here's the youth center, hooray! Like, I like it, like, you know, Nick expedited the process, and it made sense for him to do this. So I'm like, this made sense, so I appreciate that. Ace speaking Yiddish was fun. It was a fun little side thing, you know, that sort of thing. And going to Detective Con was just a fun little adventure, you know. We still had fun on this very serious case, so it worked out evenly. Still not one of the best Nancy Drew episodes I've ever seen, but like, you know, still it was a fun one. Not gonna really ring that much up to it, but again, I enjoyed it. This was a very enjoyable episode. Hopefully next week will be more enjoyable, because next week is Halloween. Ooh. I don't know why I did that. I really don't know. But I think that's gonna do it for me tonight, everyone. But I'm gonna give this episode 1 3/4 thumbs up. You know, still good episode overall. Just, you know, felt standard at the end. But I think that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're on the way, this has been What's the Two from ActionX, reviewing every episode in the 3rd season of Nancy Drew. If you want to know what we're doing normally and What's the Two besides our Nancy Drew episode reviews, we are currently doing The Rookie Season 4 episode reviews each and every Monday mornings after a brand new episode on Sunday nights on ABC or on Hulu the next day. We're also doing Heels reviews each and every Tuesday mornings after a brand new episode, normally on Sunday nights on Stars. But next week is our Season 1 review, which will wrap up this series for now. Hopefully we'll get to come back for more, but that will wrap it up next week. And also, yeah, I forgot, there's no Rookie episode next week, so we're off the air for that, which I'm very thankful. I kind of need a little bit of a siesta, because I'm tired. Not of the show, just in general, I'm just mentally tired. We're also doing DC Stargirl Season 2 episode reviews each and every Wednesday morning after brand new episode on Tuesday nights on the CW, or for the next day on the CW app. And we're also doing Doom Patrol Season 3 episode reviews each and every now Saturday mornings after a brand new episode on Thursdays on HBO Max. Now that is crucial, because like, wait, isn't Nancy Drew on Saturday mornings? Isn't that when we get our reviews out? Well, next week Walker Season 2 premieres. It's back. Jared Padalecki's newest show is now just another CW show about a damn, I said a curse word there. A Texas Ranger. Season 2 premieres next week. But however, because Season 2 starts on a Thursday and we have our New Patrol episodes also on a Thursday, it was kind of conundrum. But I've decided Walker Season 2 will take over the Friday time slot from Doom Patrol. And then Doom Patrol will take over Nancy Drew's time slot on Saturdays. Meaning that Nancy Drew, starting next week, well, in a little bit more than a week from now, we'll take over the Sunday time slot for What's in the Tube. I thought long and hard about this. It was just very... For me, I always liked Walker a little bit more than Doom Patrol. A little bit more. Like, it's still fresh, it's still new, and also I love Jared Padalecki. I love that world. So I was inclined to do it. Plus, Doom Patrol and Nancy Drew feel like Halloween weekend show reviews, so like we're gonna do that then. So it's gonna be fun. But again, Doom Patrol is wrapping up next month, so Nancy Drew will return to the Saturday time slot eventually, but for now, it'll be pumped over to Sundays for now. So do not fret. It just is going to be an extra day delay, so you have more time to watch both Doom Patrol and Nancy Drew to get ready for those reviews during the weekend, which will be fun. I think it'll be a fun time. What do you think? For me, I think it will be fun. I was about to say an accident. I think it will be fun, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, so, and also, next Nancy Drew episode review will be on Halloween. So whether or not I'll dress up is a big, we'll see what happens. We'll see. No guarantees on anything, because I kind of belated getting my costume this year because just a lot of other stuff popped up with financials. So I'm not sure if I will dress up this year, but we'll figure it out. We will figure it out soon. But again, if you were unaware, this has been What's in the Two from ActionX reviewing. I was about to repeat the moniker, but if you enjoy what I was freaking blabbering about, please subscribe to youtube.com/ActionX videos. Ring that bell for notification when our next Nancy Drew review is live, which is now on Sunday mornings. please also give this review a like, a favorite, and a share, because it helps us get us out there to other members of the Drew crew who have yet to discover us. It also helps us beat up that YouTube algorithm that hates me ever so much in life, and as well as sharing us for free here on the interwebs. And please also follow us on social media to stay up to date with any sort of updates for the channel. Yeah, but until then, for all you members of the Drew crew, I'll see you all on Halloween for our next episode review. But until then, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.